Hey everyone, today I'm going to be reviewing the Durock silent linear switch manufactured by JWK. If you've ever looked into premium mechanical keyboard switches, then you've probably heard of JWK switches as being many of the community favorites for their extreme smoothness. There's plenty of JWK switches out there in a bunch of different colors like the alpacas, the mauves, H1s, tangerines, and the new silk and dry series from Novel Keys. The ones that I have are in the Daybreak colorway. It has this nice blue stem and a smoky gray housing. They also have a dolphin colorway that uses a clear housing, and the only difference between the two are that the Daybreak uses 67 gram springs and the dolphin uses 62 gram springs. In terms of materials, this switch is pretty standard for JWK switches. The bottom housing is made of nylon. The top housing is made of polycarbonate. The stem is made of palm. And the spring has a 67 gram bottom mount and is gold plated. The way that JWK achieves the silent aspect of these switches is actually quite interesting. On the stem rails, there are ridges cut out so a silicone dampener can sit inside. The dampener has large pads on the top and bottom to negate a lot of the sound from the bottom out and return when you press on the switch. One thing that's actually quite frustrating is if you accidentally knock the dampener off, like when taking apart the switch to lube it, it's actually pretty difficult to put the dampener back on without some really fine tweezers. The Durock silent linears do work differently than the silent switches from Zeal, like the Helios, Sakurios, Roselios, and Xylants. For those, they actually inject the dampening material, so it's part of the stem itself. This dampening rubber is a good bit firmer than the silicone JWK uses, so it's actually a little bit louder and also is less squishy feeling for the bottom out. I'm going to make a detailed comparison about these Durock silent switches and the silent linear switches from Zeal, so be sure to subscribe so you can see that when that comes out. For all of these sound comparisons, I'm going to be using this decibel reader app that I have on my phone. Decibels are essentially units for measuring how loud something is, so we'll be able to get some actual metrics on how much quieter this switch is than others. My room has an ambient sound in the 30s to 40s, which is a touch under what this app rates as a quiet home. As you can hear, they're still pretty scratchy and decently loud, even with the small amount of factory lubing that they have. I'm going to lube these with some Krytox 205 G0 and add some switch films. Then we'll compare that with some non-silent switches. I'm going to use the Silk Yellows, which are also made by JWK and are the non-silent version of this exact switch. as well as the drop poly Panda V2s, which I consider to be quite loud. Then we'll have a final typing sound test with them all lubed up and filmed. So after a nice lube job and some added films, these sound incredible. To be honest, I think the sound of my nails tapping on the keycaps are actually louder than the sound of the actual switches. If you do plan on getting some sound switches, I would highly recommend that you lube and film them to get the most that you can out of them, or they just won't sound as good. They are meant to be quiet after all. Silent switches are great if you need to be quiet, like if you work in an office or the people you live with just don't want to hear the sounds of you clacking away on your keyboard. I really love these switches and will definitely be using them in my silent builds for when we're all actually able to go back to offices in the future. If you like this review, please consider subscribing to my channel, it really does help me out immensely. Then you'll also be able to see my future reviews when they come out, like the head-to-head comparison of these switches versus Zeal silent linears, which should be coming out in the next few weeks. Anyways, thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.